Hello, hello! Welcome back to episode 161 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy, and while I was trying to write an intro this week, I almost got heat stroke. That's a magic card.
Yeah,
it was like walking outside into a heat ray, another magic card. I was blasted with a wall of heat, still a magic card. Outside, there's just unholy heat. I have 4 magic cards in my intro, man. There's also, there is a card named Heat Wave. Outside of Michigan right now, it's a heat wave. Actually, I think right now the world's on fire and everybody's in a heat wave. So please drink lots of water, everybody. That's my intro.
Yeah, and don't forget that it's all being caused by a giant mass in the center of our solar system called a fireball. A fireball, yeah.
Oh, fireball for X equals 40, because that's our life totaling commander.
And we're dying. And I'm your other host, Mike. And if you haven't been following the trends, there is a color of Dragon Shield sleeves that has really gone up in price lately.
Oh?
Yep, the cost of petrol is pretty ridiculous right now.
Oh, that was a good one.
Thank you.
That was so smart.
Please listen carefully.
And this is the podcast about Commander.
Our favorite Magic the Gathering format.
Listen, no one has talked about this new intro, this new slogan that we have. We're trying to come up with a new tagline. The other one just seemed really generic. So we really want to know. We might change it up again. Who knows? We're going to keep you on your toes. But for real, though, gas is crazy expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The heat is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Things happening politically in the U.S., also on fire in the trash can. If you didn't hear, we have members of Congress getting arrested for peaceful protests. Everything's insane right now. So we hope that this fun little show that we provide is a small respite from what is happening in the world. Aside from that, let's talk about something fun, which is this game called Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, that's a great game. I love that game.
It's a great game. Let's transition over to something fun. Mike, we are seeing a new Secret Lair. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Yes, this is Secret Lair crossed with Fortnite, a game that I have not played before, but I've played games that are very similar to it, adjacent
I've
to
also
it.
not played Fortnite ever.
I
see it everywhere online.
Have you ever played any of those like King of the Hill shooter type of games, like PUBG or anything like that?
No, but I've played the Balloon Pop in Mario Kart. Is that like the same thing? There's one person left at the end. I have no idea.
Maybe that could be the closest thing that you've played to a game such as Fortnite.
I've played multiplayer GoldenEye.
Okay. It's similar to that, but there's a play of an area of play that keeps shrinking. And the map starts out a lot bigger, and it starts out with a lot more players than just the 4 controllers that can plug into one console.
So it's like the Hunger Games when they want Katniss to no longer be where Katniss was.
Totally. Absolutely. Okay. Yes.
Fortnite is the combination of GoldenEye and the Hunger Games.
That's right. So there's a secret lair combining with Fortnite. We are going to get some really cool cards here. 7 reprinted cards in some Fortnite artwork, and actually specific Fortnite names for these. So we have Wrath of God called Shrinking Storm. So that's the shrinking playfield I was alluding to. We have Dance Battle, which is Dance of Many. We have Supply Llama, which is an Ethereum sculptor. We have Crack the Vault, which is a Grim Tutor. Battle Royale, which is Triumph of the Hordes. I really, really like that reprint. Battle Bus, which is Smuggler's Copter. And The Cube, which is a planar bridge. So you can pick up all of these in foil or non-foil. And we also are getting a basic land drop along with Fortnite. So I assume these are areas within the Fortnite map you can go to. So obviously we have a plains, island, swamp, mountain, and forest. And we depict a farmland, some sort of island with a shark cave on it.
I like the shark cave a lot.
The shark cave's cool. Surprised this one's not a plains based on what we had before on the Cancer basic land. No, sorry. That's just, I'm still salty about how.
Oh, the astrology lands that you can't get your sign in
it's
non-plains.
It's just the fact that the ones with giant crabs on them were plains and not islands. I'm not a Cancer sign, so that doesn't affect me. But
what sign are you again?
I'm
I
a
even
Gemini.
made a joke about that. Oh, you're Gemini.
That's right.
You know what that means.
That means our
I have no
relationship
idea.
our relationship is fiery or something.
Oh, yeah. That's what that was.
We have a swamp here, which is depicted by some like lily pads and stuff. It seems like a very tame swamp, if I'm being honest. There's trees. Like it's not dark.
Like
and
I would go
morbid.
to this swamp.
Yeah.
This is a pretty cool swamp.
And there's some bones, I guess, in that picture. But there's a mountain that looks like a snowy mountain with some castles, and then a nice forest area. Kind of looks like Winnie the Pooh's forest. I forget the name of that forest. That forest.
The 100-acre woods.
That one. It kind of looks
Can you
like
believe
that.
I remember that? It does. It does look like that.
That will also come in foil and non-foil. So if you want to pick those up, between July 21st and July 24th, go ahead and get your orders in.
Yeah, that is coming up. Actually, it's through July 25th. So,
okay.
Fans attending San Diego Comic-Con can visit the Wizards of the Coast booth, I guess, for a photo shoot. So maybe there's some Fortnite stuff set up there. We will not be at Comic-Con, but this is cool. I don't know if there's any reprints here. I mean, Grim Tutor again. That's great. If someone was still looking for it, it became more affordable when we got it reprinted. Triumph of the Hordes is still, I think, an expensive card, but this is like our, I don't know how many times we've got Wrath of God and
that's true.
Smuggler's Copter, and didn't we just get Planar Bridge again in Modern Horizons 2022?
In Double Masters 2022.
That's what I meant. Double Masters 2022.
I think so. We did just get a reprint of this.
Yeah,
in
so I think this one
capacity.
is for real, like super. If you just play the game, I think this is definitely going to be for you. There's also some changes coming to Magic product. The announcement says, as we continually evaluate our product lineup for Magic the Gathering, we have made the decision to focus their major releases in 8 core languages moving forward, starting with Dominaria United. So those languages are going to be English, Japanese, Chinese Simplified, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Portuguese. So it sounds like Russian, Korean, and Chinese Traditional are no longer going to be published. I saw a really great thread with some people talking about, their love of these languages in cards. So while it is unfortunate, it certainly is a business decision that they had to make. So if you are looking for Russian, Korean, or Chinese Traditional, it looks like you'll be able to get them up until Dominaria United, which I think is our next set that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have anything but before that coming out.
I don't think so either. It'll be interesting to see that the Russian foil version of a card is not the most expensive version of the card anymore, which is, I don't even know if that's true anymore. I haven't been following it.
I saw some discussion on that as well. And some people said, well, I wonder if this is going to impact the prices, but it sounds like the finance groups were saying not really, because the actual supply of cards that were printed previously haven't changed anyway.
Right.
So they don't expect this to change that. But yeah, the foil Russian printings may not be super duper expensive, the most expensive card, I guess, because they won't be there, but they won't be the most expensive printing of a card. Mm-hmm. We also are hearing rumors online, so this is completely unconfirmed, but that with Dominaria United, there may be a return of Priceless Treasures. So if you're not familiar with Priceless Treasures, it was something that came out with the original, very first print run of the original Zendikar set from Zendikar. And it was a set of rare and expensive, super old cards that were inserted into those booster packs. That set was based on adventuring and like treasure hunting. There's a card called Treasure Hunt in, I believe it's that set. It might be World Wake. But so they added a bunch of old cards that most of them were reserve list. Some were not reserve list. That apparently you could open. People, it has been reported, because none of them were like filmed, I guess, was being opened from what I could gather online. But cards like all of the original dual lands that are reserve list, Badlands, Bayou, Savannas, Volcanic Islands, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
or even some of the Power 9 cards, the most expensive cards in the game, Mox Emerald, Jet, Pearl, Ruby, Sapphire, cards like Black Lotus, Time Walk, Time Twister, even Ancestral Recall were reported to have been in them. So it's rumored that this may come back with Dominaria United. So curious to see if that will come up. That would be wild to open up.
Would love a Time Walk. Yeah. Give me a Time
I would
Walk.
love, give me a Time Twister. Give me a,
sure.
I think Time Twister would be nice because, I mean, I guess if I have to get one, okay, I'll take a Black Lotus.
I'll take a Mox Emerald. It's fine.
It's fine. But like, I actually have Time Twister with a playtest Time Twister in my CEDH deck because I don't have the money for that.
Yeah.
And if I were to, I guess if I take one, I'll get a card that I play. So that'd be kind of cool. Well, I mean, I'd take a Volcanic Island or an Underground Sea too because I don't have those either.
Yeah, no, I would totally take an Underground Sea.
I'll take any of these. Honestly, I just hope to open one because I loved opening the. I got one of those. One of the ones from the Amonkhet block called Invocations. I opened an Invocation and it felt really good opening one of those.
Yes, I don't disagree. I also opened one in my first box of Amonkhet. So yeah, no, it felt really good.
You opened the best one at the time too. Your Force of Will.
I did open a Force of Will, and I sold it for $100, and it goes for a lot more than that now.
Yes, and now you have a podcast, and you have lots of decks. But before we continue, we have some people that we have to thank. Thank you so much to all of our patrons specifically. You help keep our show going. We're actually working on getting some new stuff. We're actually getting on some new stickers. And if you're in our Patreon lounge, Coyle posted some pictures. His group is working on some stickers and cutting them out with a Cricut machine. And the Cricut, it wasn't so lined up. I would love to send those stickers out though.
Yeah.
they were cut right through the logo or right off the logo.
Some of them is just white. It's just white paper in the shape of our logo, but smaller. And we just need to scale the cut to the same size as the scale of the image. And we don't have a Cricut that both prints and cuts. It only cuts. So we have to print it and then line it up perfectly, get the scaling correct. It's difficult. And I'm having my high school students on my robotics team do it for me because because it's their machine basically. I bought
Smart
it for the
kids.
Team. Yeah,
and they'll figure it out. They know how to do this.
They get better and better every try.
Exactly. So for everybody who is a patron, once we have stickers, we'll send out some stickers and we'll be able to send those out to new patrons as well. And to everybody else who listens, thank you so much for being here every week. If you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/guardianprojectpod and donate for any dollar amount.
And if you're looking for another way to support the podcast or an additional way to support the podcast, whatever you are enjoying the podcast on now, whether that's Spotify, if that's Apple Podcast, if that's YouTube, if you could like, subscribe, rate, leave comments, follow, hit that bell icon to get notifications if you're on YouTube, we would really appreciate it.
Yes, and you can find us YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Just search Guardian Project Podcast. We're on Twitch. You can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com if you're looking for any of our other avenues to consume our content. Mike, what are we chatting about this week?
So we already have a plethora, a bandolier, if you will, of tools that help us create commander decks. But we were given another awesome tool to not only help us build commander decks, but analyze commander decks in the way that we love to do with our data. So we are going to do a deep dive into Lucky Paper Radio's brand new commander map tool that, again, we have been using since its release for some deck building and to analyze our decks versus the community's decks and everything. And we're going to do a little bit of dive on how to use this map and give you a few examples of some maps we've produced and some information we've gleaned from those maps.
All right, let's check it out. It's much better than MapQuest. So the other week I was at work and I did in fact talk to a client who's going to be coming into town, and when they were asking how far the hotel that they're going to be staying at is from our office, I said, hold on, let me pull up MapQuest, and then was mortified because who still uses MapQuest? But I did look it up through MapQuest. It's like 9 minutes.
MapQuest says you have 23 steps and you can print it out with advertisements in 3 different pages.
And the passenger is going to look at the map and then forget to tell you when to turn. And now you're just screwed.
And you don't know what step you're on anymore.
You have no idea which one you missed, and you have to find an actual map. So thank God for cell phones and Google Maps and Apple Maps.
Yes.
But this map is unlike any of those.
If you didn't understand that joke, you were born after 1998. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. So I do want to start with Lucky Paper Radio's explanation of how you can use this map. And it says, taken as a whole, the map visualizes the breadth and depth of the world of Commander, showing the vibrant creativity of deck builders. Zooming in, the map reveals details and trends that aren't visible when we visualize the most impactful features on the format. So if you haven't taken a look, and I know we mentioned this previously, this map has a bunch of dots on it. It kind of mapped out everything that you can currently see on EDHREC onto like an easy to view I guess visualization of how the maps relate to each other, where the colors are, what kinds of decks that relate to each other, themes, colors, things like that. And it says, as you explore the map, highlighting decks will reveal what different regions are all about. The commanders and colors will give you a quick impression of that region, and you can inspect everything from themes of decks and defining cards all the way down to actual individual deck lists. And it says, working on the opposite direction, you can highlight aspects of decks like colors and commanders and themes to see how they're distributed across the map and how they form trends and clusters across the larger geographic structures. And then it finally says, to get even more detail, you can focus on any one particular color or commander or a tribe or a theme to see just a map of those types of decks. So each of those uses the algorithm on a subset of decks, often revealing more nuanced patterns where the most obvious distinguishing characteristics aren't in play. So we're gonna start where they said to start, which is we can focus on a few different things. So we're gonna do just that. We're gonna look at some colors, some commanders. We're gonna look at tribes, and we're gonna take a look at some themes this week. And there was a lot of really cool stuff as we were actually going through a lot of these commander maps. So why don't we go ahead and start here with a color? And Mike, you focused on Abzan. So that is white, green, and black.
Yes. So the Abzan color combination has 24,947 decks at the time of writing the notes for this episode, which does happen to be the least amount of decks for any of the 3 color combinations. I like Abzan. From what I've been playing with my Abzan in pods against other people's Abzan, I always thought mine was a little bit different because mine is a tokens deck, and it's kind of what would be considered a tokens junk deck. So any type of token, not focused on anything. So I was very, very, very interested in looking at this Abzan map to see like where my deck falls compared to everything else, and to see where some of the other things happen. So if you've never seen a map like this before, most of them are made up of islands. So if you're wondering exactly how each one of these dots is generated, if you think about it like an XY axis on a graph, every card is one of those axes, and we're talking about just like a million axes graph. And then for every card that's similar from one deck to the next, that will be on the same axis. So the more cards you have in similar, the more, or the closer that those clusters will be. So these islands all represent clusters of these cards that share these common cards and will have common themes. So if we look at the Abzan map itself, the biggest island is the central island, but it is kind of a longer island as compared to the outskirt islands, which you'll see about 6 of when you generate this map. So the center island is based around sacrifice and reanimation type of decks, which not very surprising. We're in Abzan. You're going to be sacrificing stuff and reanimating stuff. I mean, you see a lot of instances of like Gave, Guru of Spores, that cares about removing +1/+1 counters, but Gave ends up killing itself every time that kind of happens. Carador, Ghost Chieftain, that costs less for each creature that's in your graveyard, and then every turn you can cast a creature from your graveyard. Those types of things. Even Nethroi from the newest Ikoria set that brings back 10 power worth of creatures back from your graveyard to the battlefield. Those are all happening in this main island chunk, but it varies so much, all the way from Kamal, Heart of Kroza, and Timna the Weaver to Nethroi, all the way on the other side.
There's a Kodama the East Tree and Timna the Weaver, and even on the outskirts of this main island, you've got Kolfanor the Last of You, and then the Friends Forever partner group of Oathhelm, Sigardian Outcast, and Wernog Riders Chaplain. So this is quite a huge grouping of Abzan commanders that all follow a pretty similar theme which is why they're falling into this central category.
For sure. And as you can see, as you move through that central category, in the middle of it, you do see you'll see Gav or Gave, however you pronounce it, Guru of Spores, because that's around the area that you start caring about both a token sub strategy and a +1/+1 counter sub strategy. So since those are considered sub strategies for those decks, that's why they're on this sacrifice aristocrat island. But if we move to the northeast to that separate island, now we're talking about +1/+1 counters and tokens together. And again, you have this representation of Gave, Guru of Spores, who cares both about +1/+1 counters and particularly Saproling tokens, which has its own peninsula on this island, actually, just specifically Saproling tokens. So my tokens deck is actually going to end up in the northern peninsula of this northeast island on here as a junk tokens deck.
Listen, I do not want to live on Sacrifice Island. If I had to pick any island to live on, it's definitely not Sacrifice Island, but this has lots of birthing pot effects, aristocrat. I mean, these decks are what I think of, honestly, when I think of Abzan, because you built tokens, but you have some sacrifice and aristocrat strategies in it too. I've seen. So this is what I think of when I think of Abzan, which is why I think this is obviously the biggest island on this individual commander map.
Yes. Now there are a few more islands to the southwest of the main island that represent both +1/+1 counters and just counters matter. So we got Tiam, Luminous Enigma, as well as Cathrall Aspect Warrior in the Ikoria Precon. I don't remember the Ikoria 3-color combination name, so I'm going to keep calling it Abzan. But those particular commanders cared about any type of counters, which does also include +1/+1 counters, but doesn't have to be. So that's why +1/+1 counters actually is its own island, and counters matters is its own island. They are close to each other, though.
It is called Indatha. Plains,
Indatha
swamp,
Triome.
Forest, the Indatha Triome.
Yeah, so those Indatha Ikoria creatures are represented in those two islands, but even more represented in the southern island, which I have named the Cathrall Precon Island. So as we talked about with how this map is generated, when decks have similar cards or the same cards, they are generated closer together on this map. There is a giant chunk of upgraded precons, barely changed precons, probably just precons uploaded exactly the way they came in the box. And these are all so similar because they all are using the exact same cards that you have the most dense island in the south. Again, named the Cathrall Precons Island. It does have more than just Cathrall as the commander. As you can imagine, it also has Tiam, Luminous Enigma, one of the alternate commanders, and the partners do show up here as well, Nakara and Yannick.
It's good island. It's good island then.
It's very underrepresented with those partners though on here.
It really is. I'm looking at it right now and I almost only see Cathrall, and you occasionally see like one Nethroi falls in. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you really have to look hard for Tayam as well.
Yes. Now there's a few more other smaller islands that kind of stick out like a sore thumb, honestly. Over on the east side, we have a Life Gain Island. This island is mostly represented by Ikra Shadiqui, the Usurper, along with something to give you the Abzan colors. And Ikra Shadiqui cares about whenever a creature you control deals damage, you gain life equal to the toughness of that creature. And Ikra Shadiqui is like a 3/7 with Menace or something like that. So that island is pretty much... there's a couple like Nethroi decks in there too that are probably caring about like life gain ping strategies with like Soul Warden and stuff I see as common cards in those particular decks. But life gain itself, not like partially represented in a lot of these other decks. This island is way off on its own, as well as the Toughness Matters Island way to the north. So we know that Doran the Siege Tower, that's at least a deck that's in our local play group that cares about toughness. Creatures assign combat damage equal to their toughness rather than their power. But you see Kulfiner up there as well that cares about that has a little bit of a Toughness Matters themed. Again, you see sprinkles of other commanders of people playing stuff like Anafenza the Foremost that doesn't actually care about toughness, but they play it as their commander, and their toughness matters deck because it really cares about the 99.
Yeah, I really like these small islands that you found, and there's a few random small islands I think on both of ours that
Yes.
you're like, what is this? But I like this small little island of Carador, Ghost Chieftain decks, or Kamal Heart of Krosa and Timna the Weavers that are just elves.
Yeah,
It looks like if you zoom out on the map, it looks like a toothpick. Like it's like a straight line, which is so weird. But they're like, no, I'm playing Abzan elves, and they're all elves. There's Tam, Luminous Enigma, Kethis, the Hidden Hand. There's Dogtar the Adamant. So that is a bolster deck, which that's really fun. There's elves, specifically historic elves, and then populate elves. So I like the tribe is elves, and there's some different themes, but this little teeny island was fun to see.
There is even a smaller island to the southeast that is the Spirits Island that also has Carador, Ghost Chieftain, as the predominant.
That makes sense.
But yes, Spirits, very, very particular. I'm sure those deck lists don't vary by much, and the cluster is very dense, because there's probably not that many spirits to pick from. I mean, with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, maybe I'm eating my words there, but not a whole lot of spirits there. And one last island that I did want to talk about. This island is, it kind of looks like Hawaii. It's a group of 2 islands together, and this is the island it's mostly represented by Kethis, the Hidden Hand. And Kethis, the Hidden Hand, cares about legendary permanents. So you can cast legendary permanents from your graveyard by exiling other legendary permanents from your graveyard. So there is the southern island that cares about legendary permanents in general, and the northern island that's more specific on planeswalkers.
Yeah. It's wild to see these so spread out,
right?
Because like the Kethis decks, for the most part, don't overlap with the Precon deck, which doesn't overlap with the Sacrifice decks. They are very different from where all their cards fall onto this. The color that I picked, because I don't talk about it very much, is Dimir, so blue-black. This is representing 67,333 decks at the time that we recorded this. And when you look at this color pairing, you see a few larger islands, and then there's actually quite a few very teeny tiny islands here. So we're obviously not representing 3 colors, so there's a lot more maybe variety, because there's a lot more 2-color legendaries than there usually are 3-color. Obviously we have lots of color pairings here, but it looks like the top 3 islands that we have here are really a Ninja's Island, which is including Yuriko the Tiger Shadow and Satoru Umezawa. We have Zombies, which is primarily made up of Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver and the Scarab God. So that, again, I wasn't surprised about. We have Giza and Geralf as well. There's all of those really primary zombie commanders in that. And then we also have some other islands that include things like Mill, or even some control decks that kind of break out from the main island here. And then finally, the other huge one here is Rogues, which is a lot of Sig River Cutthroat decks, Anawan the Ruin Thief decks, and they're really just tribal rogues for the most part. Zareth Sam the Trickster, and those are like the real, like the primary, I guess, islands. And then there's a lot of islands that I guess they like have like bridges. I'm going to say that they put bridges together here, because there's like 3 islands connected to an island that has like Toxrill the Corrosive, Sig River Cutthroat, Xanathar Kingpin. They're all just generic Dimir decks, but breaking off of them are like Atrada, the Silencer decks, Phoenix, God of Deception, things like that. So we're seeing some of the more popular blue-black decks, and none of this really surprised me. And I was surprised also to see that, honestly, it looks like the Ninja's Island is almost bigger than the Zombie Island.
Yeah, it does. Like, it's definitely way more spread out. That's for sure. I think the Zombie Island might have some more density when you start going towards, like, it looks like the northern part of the Zombie Island is specifically zombie tokens, and you see a lot of density. But again, I see also a lot of Will Help the Rock Cleaver there, and that could be the precon effect causing net density.
It absolutely could. And when you do look, because we know that this comes from the same data that EDA Track is getting, the top 5 commanders for Dimir are Yuriko, Wilhelt, Anawan the Rune Thief, the Scarab God, and Satoru. So 2 of these 5 are zombie commanders, 2 of these 5 are ninjas, and 1 of them is vampires. So completely makes sense with what we're seeing here. And I like seeing, though, that we also have a small island to the west, maybe the southwest, I guess, for Runo Stromkirk, which is really an island of toughness matters and sea creatures.
Yeah,
so
just a whole bunch of krakens.
We got release the kraken in the southwest. Over to the east, I don't know, pretty central. There is a full island of just clone decks.
I like this.
Gyruda, Doom of Depth, Lazav Dimir Mastermind. There are some Atris Oracle of Half-Truth decks, and then partners decks with Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. With like Senjir the Dark Baron or Tormod the Desecrator. But also I'm seeing there's a small little break away from that, which is like full of Etrata the Silencers that also have a bounce theme. So I'm assuming they're clones, but also it's just a bunch of bounce spells.
Yeah, to bounce Etrata back to your hand and try to win with the hit counters type of deal. That makes sense.
Exactly. And then I think we do have another precon effect. There's an island that is off to the northwest, which is just the Captain Nathingrod island. But there's a lot of horrors, there's mill, and there's also some toughness matters in Captain Nathingrod. So that is the horrors, the blue-black horrors commander that actually had just come out with Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. And there's a lot of small clusters that are all over the place. And I think one of my favorite, the teensiest, weensiest one is Dimir Infect decks that are Toxrill the Corrosive, John Aranicus, Satoru Umezawa, Krydel of Baldur's Gate, Lazav the Multifarious, and Vela the Nightclad. It's like, what is this tiny little island? And it's not far from the Captain Nathingrod one. So it's pretty central, but way to the west. And it's not next to anything, but they're all infect decks.
That's interesting. I like that. I'm looking at this map, and the 2 islands that I was interested in seeing in particular, and the west and the central, there seems to be like there's a lot of Toxrill the Corrosive, and it's difficult to find a theme here because there's like sludge monsters and stuff, but there's a few decks on the right hand side that are actually Planeswalker tribal. So Dimir Planeswalker tribal, but the most common card between them is Sludge Monster. So I'm not really sure if the Planeswalker tribalness here is well represented, or if they're all just playing Sludge Monster. But also in the northeast corner of this map, there is an exile theme going on with like Umbris, the Fear Manifest. This one plays a lot of like Tasha's in there, and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, cards that are going to exile people's cards. But then we cannot move away from this map, Andy, before we talk about the smallest little sliver island, something that was very, very similar to the Elves Island in the Abzan map we just looked at. In the northwest hand corner, there is every single one of these decks is represented by the legendary creature Skeleton Ship.
Yes.
And this does use actually a few different themes. The top of this aisle, if you will, is using like an infect theme, actually. And then there is a -1/-1 counters theme in here as well, and a skeletons theme. So this particular island is the island of Skeleton Ship. Definitely not a place you want to go to, but chances are if you go to it, the Skeleton Ship's not going to let you off.
Okay, so which one's worse, the Infect Island or the Island of Skeleton Ships? Because I'm still saying Sacrifice Island is bad because I feel like I am being sacrificed there.
I feel like the Skeleton Ship Island's the worst because it's not like actively killing me. I'm going to die of starvation. I just can't get off the island.
Oh, that's That's terrible because the water it's obviously in the ocean where it's salt water, so like you can't
Right.
just drink it. So
You could
that's
eat.
rough.
You could eat some fish or something, and maybe you could evaporate some water. The sublimation or something to get some fresh water that way. But that's a whole lot of science, and I'm not suited for that kind of living.
Yes. Now let's take a look at specific commander cards so we can take a look at their decks and where they fall into other decks. So when I was talking with, I was messaging, I wasn't talking specifically, but when I was talking with Anthony from Lucky Paper Radio, I was really excited to talk about Jaren Corrupted Bishop. I have really fallen in love with this deck. I think it puts on a really fun show with trading life away and sacrificing creatures and flipping Jaren into Ormondal. But I don't think that I play Jaren Corrupted Bishop in the most traditional sense. And I think this map really helped me explore what Jaren or how Jaren cards fit into, or Jaren's card fits into the overall commander world. Because when you look at Jaren, it has 296 decks for itself. When you look at the map itself, it really only appears from one general cluster. And he really only falls in mono black decks that are maybe doing some generic sacrifice things. It's not really anything different than maybe playing with like a Shirei, maybe sacrificing things, but Shirei cares about certain powers and Jaren cares about them being human. So there's some differences. And I think what I found most interesting is that Jaren appears to be closely related to decks that are running sacrifice themes like Ghoul Caller Giza, Tabarax, Shirei, and even when you look at the greater scale, Athreos, God of the Passage, which is black but adds white, which I think was really interesting because when I looked at these, I said, why is this related so closely to Tabarax? And Tabarax is a commander that also cares about sacrificing and also cares about demons. And I quickly realized it made sense that Jaren was doing this because Tabarax decks play a lot with Shadowborn Apostle. So Tabarax is it says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Tabarax. If that creature was a cleric, you can draw a card. Now the only human cleric that fits in both of these decks is Shadowborn Apostle. So it's a human. So with Jaren, you would lose a life and you would make another human. With Tabarax, you're going to put counters on it because it was a cleric, and they can have a demon sub theme. So I thought that was really interesting, and then made me want to build a Shadowborn Apostle deck. So now that Shadowborn Apostle are affordable, I bought a bunch of them. So maybe you'll see it on stream this week. Who knows? Maybe if they all arrive on time, you definitely will see it.
Yeah. I'm interested to know, and obviously this is not a question that we can answer us. We'll have to ask the folks over at Lucky Paper. For those particular types of decks that do use cards you can use more than one copy of, how those are taken into account for matching. So like, is my Shirei deck that runs 30 Shadowborn Apostles getting 30 matches with your deck that's running 35 Shadowborn Apostles or something like that? So I don't think it would affect the shape of the map much, but it would definitely affect the math, and I'd be interested to see what that math looks like.
Yeah, and I assume that Jaren would also be more closely related with maybe some decks that are also playing cards like Liliana's Contract, where it's an enchantment. If you have five demons with different names at the beginning of your upkeep, you win the game. So Jaren is a demon on its flip side. So, I mean, your commander can be one of those demons, which I think is really interesting. Some of the outliers where Jaren is appearing is in Anawan the Rune Thief deck and Vela of the Nightclad. What I thought was surprising was that I expected to see Jaren more often with human-themed decks, though, like General Kudro of Drannith, the black-white commander that came from Ikoria, and they literally don't overlap at all on this map. So I was surprised to see that. So, but looking through, Jaren decks in general, you see a lot of life gain themes, you see demon themes, Shadowborn Apostles. So that's the sacrifice themes there. And my favorite of all of them is that I found in here a lone party themed deck, which cares about the whole plethora of the gang for a party there. I couldn't find any others. I mean, I zoomed in and I hovered over all these little dots to see if there was even one more, and there wasn't. So I love that it had a party sub theme. So I think Jaren can do quite a bit in mono black, and this was a cool one to dive into.
It's interesting that you did mention that you didn't see any human sub theme, because spoiler, we'll talk later, there is definitely some Jaren human sub theme decks, and it'll be interesting to see how you can see the same data represented in a different way, and it'll look different because you're comparing it to other things. Yeah, sure. That'll make sense. That'll make sense later in the episode. So the commander that I picked, I'm obsessed with 3 colors. That's just me.
Yeah, it's kind of your brand. It's kind of your brand.
And Baldur's Gate really got me out of my shell to start building 2-color decks again. But because I am into 3 colors, I decided that I wanted to look at one of my decks that I thought was going to be pretty unique. Turns out it's not. Illuna Apex of Wishes. So Illuna, there's 1,451 Illuna decks. And the particular map that you get to generate just from Illuna Apex of Wishes, which is a creature printed in Ikoria that mutates, and when you mutate, you basically get to polymorph. If you're not familiar with polymorph, polymorph itself says you get to sacrifice a creature and then flip cards from the top of your library until you reveal another creature and put that onto the battlefield. Illuna is basically polymorph, except that you can get any permanent and not just creatures. So you mutate onto a creature, get your huge enchantment or something, or depending on what your Illuna is. So Illuna has 2 main islands on the Illuna map. One of them is overly representing polymorph, and the other one is overly representing just a general mutate strategy, which makes sense. Mutate might not be what you're actually trying to do with your Illuna deck, but EDH Rec will see that you're playing 30 mutate cards and assign the mutate strategy to your particular deck. These decks are also pretty dense on their island itself, because again, they're playing the same 30 mutate cards. The polymorph deck itself the polymorph island itself consists of both a pure polymorph strategy, a tokens strategy, and a spellslinger strategy. Turns out my Illuna deck does fall in this very dense island of token, spellslinger, and polymorph strategies, so it's really not that unique. But when it comes to actually looking at the Dimir map itself and where you find Illuna, you find Illuna representing, again, the island in the very center of the map, which represents polymorph, and the island in the very southeast, which represents mutate. So I guess in conclusion, Illuna's really weird when it comes to Dimir. There's not many other commanders that are doing the same thing that Illuna wants to do. The closest one is probably Maelstrom Wanderer, and that's more because of the chaos of getting free things more than it is of being in Dimir.
Yeah, that's fair. I do like, though, that occasionally there's some Yasova Dragonclaws and Serac Dragonclaws thrown in with like the northern group of Illuna decks, but I like that Illuna plays very different from most of the Dimir decks.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that Illuna decks don't seem to play very different from each other, but it is cool to see that extra representation in this color pie. Unfortunately, there's not much more to say about this, and there are going to be these cases where you run into these commanders that are corner case commanders, where there's going to be decks that are very similar to each other. I'm sure if I rolled up, pun intended, my dice rolling deck with Will up here, people are going to be running the exact same dice rolling cards in every single deck. It'll be a very small island with very small diversification amongst those decks. So I guess this is a good example of one of those less diverse decks that you'll see.
Yeah. So the next one is, let's move on to tribe. So we have 2 tribes here. I'll talk about wizards first, and I know you're going to talk about humans. Mm-hmm. The top 3 clusters here on this map for wizards are mono blue, which is a lot of Azami Lady of Scrolls deck. It's the most popular, and it looks like Naban is the second most popular. There's the Naban Dean of Iteration. It looks like there's a small offshoot of some Orvar decks, and then some generic other commanders like Thassa Deep Dwelling or Baron Tolarian Archmage. The second group, the island to the west of it, is the Izzet decks. So blue-red decks. Adeliz and Kaza are the top two, it appears, when you look at the map this way. There's a lot of Veyran decks, even Niv-Mizzet decks of both varieties, and the Locust God decks. So the Locust God, it was interesting to see that there are quite a few the Locust God decks with a wizard sub-theme, but there are a lot of wizards that just care about discarding and drawing cards, or just draw you cards in general. So that was interesting. And then there's I think the largest island, aside from the mono blue, is the Grixis colors, black, red, blue, which is made up of cards like Anala, Archmage Ritualist, Kess, Dissident Mage, and then a small offshoot, which is not too closely related, but also I think could be related to potentially the Precon effect, which is Anhalo the Painter with a Spellsinger theme. I don't know the actual number of wizards that came in the Anhalo deck, but there is a pretty good representation of the Anhalo up here, just off that island. So it looks pretty evenly spread out, though, to be fair, between mono blue, blue red, and then blue red black. None of them appear to be too much larger than the others. And then I thought it was really fun looking at wizard decks because there are some outliers here with like Riku of Two Reflections in the Temur colors, and also Calamax, the Stormsire wizard themed decks. And I think one of my favorites that I found was a super, I guess, a really big outlier with Triad of Fates, a deck that I don't think I've ever mentioned that I wanted to build so badly at one point. And Triad of Fates is it's a commander that cares about fate counters. It's you put a fate counter on a creature and you can exile a creature with a fate counter on it, and then return to the battlefield. So you blink it, or you exile a creature that has a fate counter on it, and then its controller draws 2 cards. So you're in black white wizards. So I thought this was interesting to see, and it fits with what I was expecting to see. But wizards are all over the place if you're just looking for like wizard themed decks.
Yes, I do like to see that very small island. You talked about the 3 and 4 color decks that you could find there with a couple 5 colors. I was like, there's got to be a Morophon deck in there somewhere. And I zoomed in. There's definitely one Morophon deck in there representing wizards. But I like looking at that island because I have a very similar island on my humans map that represents, I call it my junk island. And that's the island that just has everything else going on in it. But yes, the map that I produced was humans. And we know humans is well represented in every single color combination. Andy, you have a humans deck. I have 2 humans decks now. And we
love humans. Love humans.
They're so unique. There's so many different legendary creatures, and again, represented in so many different colors. And it shows. When you look at this map, it kind of looks like a smaller version of the entire commander map because it includes all 5 colors. You see different sizes of groupings for the different color combinations and everything. And it's just cool to see all the different representations and to finally see who the most popular, who the biggest of these islands are that you're representing. Because guess what? It's not General Kudrow over on Mardu Island in the west, even though that is the second biggest island on this map.
There's 4 that look pretty even here, though.
Yes,
I will say when you look at the general, but I think it's green white, right? Green white you think is
definitely the most popular over on the east side, and there's also some Naya stuff going on at the beginning, but not very well represented in Naya. But yeah, when you're talking about Selesnya and your green white, your Sigarda, there's 3. Yeah,
there's 3 of them. I hope we get a 4th when we go back to Innistrad. But I do think that a lot of this may be related to the Kyler and the Precon, because Catilda is really great, but also Kyler is from that Precon. Kyler Sigardian Emissary, which had Leonora as the commander, which I think I've ever seen, but I really love my green-white human deck, and it does look like it's very well supported.
Yes. Yeah, it does seem to be the largest island, which means not only do you have the most decks there, but outside of that deck density, you're talking about the most unique between those decks too. So you can have a green-white deck that has only, the lands that are similar with another green-white's human deck. There's so many different options you can play. Tracking just to the west of that, you start to develop your colors a little bit more and more. You get Abzan colors with cards like Anafenza the Foremost, some partners like Livio and Rayhan, and it does make sense that you start to see some +1/+1 counter synergies here, with green and white also caring about +1/+1. Obviously, there's +1/+1 counter synergies with most tribes, whether it's zombies or humans. So you'll also see that represented there. But just to the west of that, since we went from 2-color to 3-color, this is where we have a small grouping of 4 and 5-color commanders. The Saskia the Unyielding being the overwhelming commander for 4 colors, and 5 colors is pretty split. You have Sisay Weatherlight Captain, Najila the Blade Blossom, Morafon, and Kenrith the Return King in 5-color. Also on this island you have your Azorius 2 colors that cared about legendary creatures, because that's typically where you see those legendary creatures.
Yeah, there's an island that has some Boros colors here, red and white commanders with a lot of Rick Steadfast leader commanders. And then further south, we have some Orzhov commanders, which you mentioned may tell us a little bit more about Jaren.
Yeah, so to the northwest we have our Orzhov, our decks, and just to the north of that there is an Isle of Jaren, where it is all Jaren decks all the time. As far as I know, there isn't another mono black commander that's going to care about humans. So Jaren's your guy.
Jaren is our fan. Is it a demon? No, it is a human. It will be a demon.
It will be a demon.
So moving on to themes, let's chat about group hugs, something we don't often do on this show. And there's a lot of group hug decks represented.
Yeah, I was surprised to see one major island again here for the group hug, but I guess if you've ever sat down at your LGS and someone brought out a Kineas and Tiro of Miletus deck, you'd probably think that it was group hug as well.
Yeah.
And on top of that, people want to just play as many of the cards that they like as possible of the group hug decks. So combined with that 4-color, you also have your 5-color chunk, particularly playing Kenrith, the Returned King. All these cards being in that 4 and then +1 to 5-color combination are going to be playing a lot of the same cards, on top of the fact that Kineas and Tiro did also come in a pre-con. So if people are still playing those pre-cons, I'm guessing this is old enough where people aren't getting the pre-con effect from this one anymore.
Yeah, and that pre-con was rough.
Yes. And it was from a long time ago. But close to that island, a little bit further away, you do have a little bit of a 3-color representation in Bant, strictly from Fildegriff. There is only Fildegriff in this island. It is crazy to see. I think, there's a Kineas and Tiro on the outskirts, but in terms of the Bant colors, there is a Shoelane. There's one Shoelane Teller of Tales on this island, but it is hippos and one Shoelane.
Hippos and Tulane. I do like that there's a Simic Island with Aegis, Spymaster of Trust, Ingor, Maldrak, and Phenologist decks. And to those decks, I say, you're liars. You're not actually playing group hug. You're just letting us draw cards, and what you giveth, you will taketh away in extra turns or some shenanigans in Simic, because I have played both of these decks with the cards that would count as group hug, but I did not do nice things with them.
No. But that's okay, because I'm sure the mono blue players on the east side of this island are also only doing nice things.
Only nice things with Braids.
Well, okay, Braids is on the bottom of this island. I do find this interesting that this is, again, an isle, kind of a longer island. You have Braids on the southern part of this island that's going to allow everyone to put free permanents into the battlefield. But on the north side, you have card draw represented with Kami of the Crescent Moon, which works as a howling mine, allowing everyone to draw 2 cards at their draw step.
I thought this was super fun looking through all of these decks this week. The one thing that I wish that I had done in preparation was to actually find one of my commander decks. I typically play commanders that I feel like are less popular, but when I look at like Niambi Esteemed Speaker, there's still 365 of those, so I'd have to actually hover over and look at individual deck lists, because when you click on the little bubble, you get to see the actual deck list. Maybe I'll have to find one of my, for real, maybe my Ixava Rakdos Blood Witch, and I'll go in there and I'll see which deck is mine, just so I can say this one right here is my deck.
Let's ask Lucky Paper Radio to code in every single user as well, so that we could look ourselves up.
We know we can't find users. I cannot imagine how that would be very, very difficult to do.
It would be a lot of processing time.
I would assume it's just too much to do because this is pulling it from so many websites.
Oh yeah.
But I will have to check with one of my lowest ranked commander.
Sure.
Maybe that's what I'll do based on EDH rec. My commander with the lowest ranking, I'll go on here and then I will hover over it and I will send a screenshot on Twitter. So we hope this was interesting and we hope that you enjoyed chatting about commander maps this week. Go take a look at the actual Lucky Paper commander map. See where your decks fall. See how how closely they fall to other decks. Maybe if they fall closely related to some other commanders, maybe you could check those out. Try something else out. I like the idea of switching commanders out. My blue-red deck, that is my Wizards deck, I did originally build so I could switch out Kaza to Adeliz or to even like Niv Mizzet Perrin so that I could just have one of those, like my own version of a precon, right? So maybe you built a deck you really like, but you want to change it up because maybe you're getting bored with it. See where on the commander map it's related most likely to other commanders. I know, without having to actually just look at the individual cards from decks.
I know one thing that I used it for from Baldur's Gate was it helped me pick backgrounds for my commanders that require backgrounds, because you can pull up that commander and see all the different backgrounds that other people are building that commander with. I'm sure the same thing works with partner as well.
Great idea.
Yeah. So definitely check it out. That's one thing we didn't cover in this episode that you are going to have to go figure out for yourself.
Yes. And that's going to be it for this week. Thank you all for listening and sticking around to the very end. If you want to chat with me online, you can find me on Twitter at Andy Flory.
And you can find me on Twitter at Wormcoil Engine. Of course, I want to give a special thanks to Ryan Nichols and Chris Wolf, who handle all of our production and graphic design. So thank you so much to the both of you. Couldn't do it without you. And to all of you listening, you'll hear from us again next week. And we also want to give a special thanks to Lucky Paper Radio for producing this amazing tool that will make us better and more informed commander players in the future. So thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.